Hey everyone, welcome to Amanda's Book Corner. I'm Amanda, and Valentine's Day is just around the corner. And you know what that means? That means a lot of people are out there reading romances right now. But this is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a little while now. So in this kind of vlog style video, I'll be talking about how I went from hating romance to loving romance. For as long as romance has existed, there's been a stigma against romance. People see it as trashy, as something that's really bad quality, lowbrow, something that's made for a certain demographic of people that they don't want to identify themselves with. When I was younger, I thought of romance as something I would never want to read. I saw the book covers, like the bodice ripper book covers, like with Fabio on the cover. Those are things that I definitely wanted to distance myself from. I remember my sister and I used to make fun of these book covers. We describe them as people with their clothes falling off. They're in a close embrace. He has a smoldering gaze, and her dress is just falling off of her shoulders. It looks ridiculous. It looks overly dramatic. And it's something that when I was younger, I thought, wow, that looks really terrible and embarrassing to read. When I was in middle school, I remember this one instance where I had a class. It was my last class of the day, and I went up to where my desk was at the front of the row, and there is a romance novel left on the floor by my desk. And it was one of those covers that has like the Fabio with the clothes falling off, like I mentioned, a classic romance novel. And the guy that was sitting behind me, he showed up around the same time, and he picked up the book and said, "Is this yours?" And I was mortified. I was like, no, there's no way that's my book. I do not read romances like that. No way. So I remember being embarrassed, but then also thinking, well, why am I so embarrassed by a book that's not even mine? I didn't pick out that book, but I didn't like being associated with it, even if it wasn't mine. The ironic thing is, I've always loved love stories. When I was younger and watching Disney movies, my favorite part was the romance between the main couple. I just wanted them to be together. I just wanted them to kiss already. That's what I was there for. That's what I was watching the movie for. Then when I was in middle school, going into high school, I would read book series like the Nancy Drew book series. And sure, I was reading the book because I liked the mysteries, but I couldn't help but wonder, why isn't there more Ned Nickerson in here? Why don't Ned and Nancy, who are theoretically dating, spend more time together, act like a couple? I wanted to see them being in love with each other. And from there into my adulthood, I've always loved rom-com movies. I love seeing people fall in love. It's just something that I've always found really cute, and I like love stories. So why was I so against romances in particular, especially as a book genre? When I was in college and then my master's program, I really stopped reading for pleasure. I always kept very busy with all my actual readings that were assigned to me, and as an undergrad, I was an English major, so I had plenty of novels that I was reading. But I kind of fell out of reading for pleasure, and I kind of lost a sense of identity in who I was as a reader, what kind of books I actually wanted to read. And so in my mid-20s, I kind of was trying to figure out what kind of books I wanted to read. But I do know that early on, I saw romances, and I thought, nope, I can't go anywhere near those. That's embarrassing. So even though I was avoiding romances, it's kind of ironic that I actually ended up accidentally reading romances, but I didn't think of them as romances at the time. I'm not sure what I thought I was categorizing them as, but there's definitely some cognitive dissonance going on. One book I read early on is called Love in English, and then its sequel, Love in Spanish. And from these covers, it should be kind of obvious that they're kind of romances. So I don't know why I read these and thought, these are not romances. I'm not a romance reader, even though these were obviously romances. By the way, I read those because they were set in Spain, and I lived in Spain for a year. That's where I met my husband. So I felt kind of a personal connection, and that's kind of why I picked them out and wanted to see a love story set in Spain. I also love music, so some of my other books that I read early on that were definitely romances, whether or not I wanted to admit to it, include Catch Me and Sweet Thing. Even though I liked the content of these books, the covers didn't say they were definitely romances to me. They seemed kind of more like they could fall into like a new adult category, which I think they were categorized as new adult back when that was still a thing. But traditional romances with like that classic cover of the actual people on the cover and a close embrace, I was still avoiding those for sure. I didn't want to be caught reading something like that. So what changed? For me, the big breakthrough was in 2019. Well, it kind of starts in 2018. In 2018, I kept seeing a book, The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. Everyone knows this book now, it's become very popular. But I kept seeing it, and I saw this cute cover and thought, oh, that looks smart, it looks adorable, it has math on the cover, it's obviously for intellectuals. And I read the summary and I thought, this is a book my sister could like. She's intelligent, she's a PhD student, she knows what's up. So I thought this would be a good book for her. but I kept stalling on actually buying it for her. And in the end, I figured out that I actually wanted it for myself. I wanted to read it for myself. I mean, I should still give it to her as a gift someday, but I bought it for myself in the end. And I ended up loving it. I thought it was really fun and different from anything I'd read before. I loved the love story of it, but I also loved that it featured a woman who works in STEM. I just thought it had a lot of really interesting qualities to it. I also loved how the main character is autistic, and that's not something I know much about, but I really like getting to know different kinds of characters, and I ended up loving this book. And I immediately bought the sequel, which is out around that time, and so I bought the sequel and I loved that too. And I thought, maybe I can read romances. At least romances with these cute animated covers, you know? These covers look safe and friendly. They don't look embarrassing. Later that year, still in 2019, I picked up another book, also animated cover, called Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. Again, the cover looks approachable and cute. It's a romance, and in this case, it's a historical romance. And I read it, and I loved it. I thought it was one of the most fun books I've ever read. And so 2019 really was that year of discovery for me, that year of kind of letting go of certain prejudices and giving romances a chance, at least romances with these covers that seemed more safe or more just something that didn't look so embarrassing or so obvious, something that harkened back to like the 1980s bodice rippers that I mentioned before. These were romances that seemed updated for people more like me, people that I could relate to and actually felt proud to read. So in 2020 and 2021, I started going further and further into romance. Part of that was because in 2019, I discovered that romances aren't so bad after all. But another part of that was in 2020, we all know what happened, the pandemic hit, and it ended up becoming a very stressful and anxious time for me. I'm not someone who's ever really dealt with mental health issues very much, but something about the pandemic in 2020 in particular, I just felt very anxious and stressed. And so romances became a sort of safe escape for me, something where I could fall into a book and it wasn't heavy, it wasn't difficult. It was something that I knew would have a happy ending and that everything would work out in the end. And so it became a genre that was very comforting for me in a certain way. So between 2020 and 2021, I've discovered many more authors and read many of their books and I've loved them. People like Emily Henry and Alexis Daria and Harper St. George and Virginia Heath and Martha Waters and Sarah Desai and Jane Nicaro and now Mimi Matthews. There's been so many wonderful authors that I've discovered and I keep discovering. I have a long list of books that I want to read and authors whose books I want to get. And I found that I'm getting more and more into different facets of romance. And so it's been a really interesting experience how I went from hating romance and thinking it was embarrassing and trashy to being like, you know what, it has a lot of great qualities and it's fun and I like a lot of things about it. It's not just the love stories and the happily ever afters that we see in romance, it's also that romance often features a lot of other themes that really resonate for me. So for example, I often find romances to be very feminist and have a lot of feminist themes going on in them. This is especially true in historical romances like the ones by Evie Dunmore and Harper St. George. I also see in some more contemporary romances, especially like with career women, we see them going up against a glass ceiling and really making a name for themselves despite extra obstacles that they might face in their careers. I also like how a lot of romances address mental illness like depression, anxiety, burnout. I also see a lot more diversity in characters. We see characters who are autistic, we see characters who are queer, bisexual, gay, lesbian, transgender, non-binary. They also often address social issues like racism and poverty and class issues. They talk about friendship and family dynamics in really wonderful ways. There's a lot of wonderful things that I love in romance that's not just the romance, that's not just the couple between these two people that I want to see get together, basically. There's a lot of depth to romance. And I think that for a long time, that depth has kind of just been ignored or not acknowledged by the general population, the people who look down on romances. But now that I've been reading romances, and to be fair, I've only been reading romances that came out in the last 5 years or so, I know that romance has definitely come a long way as a genre over the decades. But at least where romance is now, in late 2010s, early 2020s, I think that it has a lot of wonderful qualities in it, and that's why I keep reading romance. Romance has become one of my favorite genres, and for me it's just very easy to love. I find that I turn to romances when I'm feeling kind of low in my life. Sometimes I read a few too many heavy books and then I want a romance as a kind of palate cleanser. And I find myself loving romances and the characters in a different way than I do with other books that I read. I feel like I look at romances and feel obsessed with them in a certain way, the way I did when I was younger, and I would get really into different movies or TV shows or characters that I loved when I was growing up. So I don't think it's fair that romance faces as much stigma as it does. And this is really about people that look down on it and think of romance as stupid or lowbrow or trashy. I'm not talking about if you've read romance and you just happen to not like it. If you don't like it, that's fine. What I don't like is how so many people look down on it and don't respect it. This is true of genre fiction in general, I think, but especially true of romances. I think it gets a lot of hate and it doesn't deserve that hate. So that's kind of my story of how I went from an enemy of romance to a lover of romance. Yes, that is a reference to a romance trope. My favorite romance trope, as it turns out. I love enemies to lovers. But anyway, I think that romance offers a lot more than people give it credit for, and I think more people should give it a chance, and you might find that you like it as much as I do. So I hope you enjoyed this vlog-style video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And to make sure you don't miss any more of my videos, please ring the bell to get all my notifications. I put out 2 to 3 book review videos every week, as well as 1 to 2 videos like this one every week, videos that are more vlogs or listicles or something like that. So thanks for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!